Hello, I'm Corey, and today is day 23 of the 100-Day Project in my version, which is 6 by 6 and 6. And the concept here is to take 6 by 6 paper from those paper pads and do a variety of paper projects. The last several days I have been doing different ways to hold and sort and store ephemera. You know, the little bits and pieces we use for our paper projects, and Lord knows there's tons of those. And I'm going to continue with that simply because I was asked to. And this one uses a Rolodex style holder to create storage. And Rolodex have been around for a long time. I had one on my desk and I just realized, you know what? I can make envelopes to fit into this Rolodex. And it doesn't matter if it's the round kind or this. And we can use this to store the ephemera we reach for all the time. So I'm going to show you two different ways, and hopefully I'll do it fairly quickly, two different ways that you can make these. One, we'll use the We Are Memory Keepers punch board. And the second way will not. You don't have to have any special tools. Also, in that, I just pushed it aside, and now I don't know what I did with it. There's two ways to make, well, there's probably more than two, but two ways that I know of to make these holes at the bottom that allow it to sit either in the round kind or in this tray kind. And this is a tool I've probably had for 20 years. It's a Rolodex punch. I have no idea if they still sell them, and if they do, what it costs. But there's a Rolodex punch. But if you don't have this Rolodex punch, you can also use a standard hole punch and some kind of a cutting tool to do the same thing. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so couple things before we start. What you will need. Well, you'll need your 6 by 6 paper. And if you have a punch board that I just showed you, you'll need a punch board. If you don't have a punch board, then you will need a piece of chipboard. And we're going to go back and revisit the 6 by 6 paper envelope we made on day 16, because you use this is what we made on day 16. You use this exact size to make this Rolodex filler. So if you're going to go with a punch board, that's plan A. And if you're not, you need a piece of chipboard or heavy-duty paper, file folder, whatever, cut to 4 inches, which is 10.2 centimeters, and 3 3/8 inches, which is 8.7 centimeters. Okay, so along those lines, so you have to decide if you're going to do style 1 or style 2, depending on your tools, and how you're going to make the holes in the bottom. And then the last thing is how you want to close your envelope. This particular closure, that tuck style, some people have a punch, some people have a die. I have this old making memories tool that allows me to make this little divot. So you have that option. You can use circle punches that you've stacked together and glued together. So just do like a, I don't know, 1/2 inch or so circle punch. And then I just punched some pieces and glued them together. And you can use a bigger one or a little bit smaller. Well, I wouldn't use anything smaller, but you can use that. Or you can use my favorite method, which is what I'm going to use, and these thin Velcro sticky back dots. And that allows easy access in and out as much as you want. It doesn't take up really any dimension, and it's super easy. So you have to decide on your closure as well. All right, type 1, and that is with the We Are Memory Keepers tool. I am going to show you how to do that. I'm going to take just this top sheet of 6 by 6 paper. And I am going to use my tool. Now you can use this size board, and actually, for the sake of convenience, I have a smaller board, and I just think it's a little bit easier to see, but you do the same thing. It's the same exact concept. So for this one, you measure what I call a fat 2 3/4. So on the top of your punch board, if I can see there, you've got measurements, and you've got 2 3/4 and 2 7/8. You don't want to go all the way to 2 7/8, but you want it a little bit bigger than 2 3/4. And the reason is, if you're doing the roller kind, it doesn't matter as much because you don't have that parameter. But here you've got this tray that it's got to sit inside. And so if you do it too big or too small, it's not going to fit well inside this tray. So what I do is I put my measurement, I think that's the right spot. Sorry, different angle with the camera. 2 3/4, and I'm going to move it over just a tiny little bit, just a smidge. And then you punch the hole, and you put your score tool inside the groove, and you score it down. There you go. And then you turn it, and you make sure that regardless of which tool, if you're using the bigger one or the smaller one, you make sure that your groove lines up with this slot right here. And then you punch it again and you score it down. And same thing, so I've got my divot, I've got my score line. I'm gonna line up this score line with this slot so you can see it's going down. Whoops, maybe I have to make sure I line it up correctly. You can see it right there, and then I'm gonna take a divot. And I'm gonna do that on all 4 sides. And that's essentially how you use this tool. Now you can see I can't score it. Let me see, can you see? I can't score it all the way to the end because this is made for smaller ones, but it works. So if you have the little guy, great. If you have the big guy, great. And I'm going to line it up and punch and do my last score mark. Now both tools, regardless of the size, have this little punch notch on the back. And so if you don't want your corners squared, you can bring it in here and round it. The big tool has a 1/2 inch round. This tool has a 1/4 inch. And I like the little bit smaller circle better, but either one will work. Or if you don't have or like either, you can just use your chomper or your handheld and use your corner rounder that way. And I generally do that simply because it's faster. Okay, so I've got my rounded corners. Now all I do is use these guides to fold my envelope. Okay, and I've got my envelope. My envelope is good. If I wanted to ink it, which I probably would because I like to ink, I ink it now before I glue it, and then I just glue it together. I'm going to glue it super lightly so I can come in and ink it later. You don't need to see me ink. Gluing it super lightly, and I'm good to go. Okay, there's my envelope. But now I need to put the holes at the bottom so that I can put it in my Rolodex. I can put it inside here. And the way I do that is I take my ruler and my pencil and I move in 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches is, I wrote it on here, it's 3.7 centimeters. Okay, so 1.5 inches. And that's my first mark. Now for this one, I am going to use the Rolodex punch just because I have it, and why not? And I'll show you how it works. And for those of you who may have this and have never used it, there is a little lip. It stops. Now you can go down here, but it'll smoosh your paper. But there's a little lip in here. This is the part that punches the holes, and there's a little line and a lip. I just line the hashtag I made up with the lip, and you can see right there. Let's see, am I close enough? You can see the mark I made and then the holes. And I line that up. And I punch really hard. And I've now got the divots I need to put this in my holder. Oh, okay, so you can see I didn't move it over quite enough. And this is exactly what I was talking about. See how it doesn't fit inside the tray? It's because I didn't move it over quite enough. You've got to make it a fat 2 3/4, okay? It still works because look, it still moves back and forth. It's not like it's the end of the world, but that's why if you want it to sit down in the tray, you want to make sure that you're making it a fat one. Okay, so that is the way with the punch tool and with the punch board. If you don't have those pieces, you are going to use this. Now you can skip this, and if you watch the envelope video, because you do it exactly the same way, and then just come back in a minute or so, and you will see how we do the bottom piece. All right, so for the envelope, I measure in, I use my ruler and my straight edge, and I measure in, I need this piece, I measure in 3/8 of an inch. Now I could make a mark and make a mark, but my ruler with these grids has, this is a 1/8, this is a 1/4, and this is a 3/8. So I'm going to line my paper up on that 3/8 inch mark, and I'm going to mark around all 4 sides. And this is important so that your envelope fits correctly and is centered. So 1, 2, sorry, it's easier for me to see it if I move it this way, 3, and 4. I'm going to do that same exact thing for all 4 sides. And now I need to measure in. And you measure in 2 3/4, or about 7 centimeters from the left. So I'm going to line my ruler up here, and I'm going to do 1, 2, and 3/4 of an inch. And so I want to, on that drop down that I made, Am I even in frame? On that drop down I made, I want to make sure that I mark it at 2 3/4. Okay, and now I am going to take this and I am going to put the point of my template at that 2 3/4. And then I'm going to wiggle it around until all 4 of my edges just touch the lines, that 3/8 inch line. I want them to just touch. And that tells me that I'm at the right spot. Then I take my stylus, and remember this chipboard is what's going to give me a little bit of give. It's not as hard as my glass surface. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to score around this. And 4. Okay, so now I've got my envelope piece, and it's not perfect. I don't know how well you can see that, but it works. It totally works. And then you come in and you fold back 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there are your score lines. And so you've got, and I'm doing it with this side up, oh, which is easier to see. I don't even know where these score lines intersect. Just like with the one we did with the punch board, you want a divot. You're not going to get this rounded corner, but it doesn't matter. So you're going to want to cut out the triangle in that divot. And so you want to cut where the 2 lines intersect, where your 2 score lines intersect. And you're going to cut just out that divot on both of them. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. You want to cut up to that line. I really hope you can see it. Okay, see, and that's my envelope. Again, I can go in with my corner rounder tool. And this is just one of those tools, regardless of what style paper craft you use. It doesn't have to be this tool, but you need a corner rounder of some sort most of the time. So that would be a great tool to invest in. Some of the tools you don't need, but this was a good one. All right. And I left this here. The only line I'm going to have to erase is whichever one is my top. If I want that to be my top or that to be my top, I think I'm going to go with that just simply because there's no words. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to erase just these 2 lines. I did them a little heavier than I normally would so you can see, but they erase completely and cleanly. Okay, then I would come in with my ink and ink before I glue, but you don't want to watch me ink. So I'm going to fold in, and now I'm ready to glue together my envelope. See, envelope. I'm going to glue it lightly again, like I did last time, so I can come in later and ink it up. If I had cut it a little bit wrong, like, oh, here, you know what? There you go. That's a great example. I folded it not perfectly. I just come in and take it off, and you don't even see it. Okay, so I'm going to use just a dot of glue. I would use a little bit more if I'd already inked this, but I'm going to come in and glue it. And now I'm going to show you how to use that second system. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm coming in. Let's see, is that a good spot? Can you guys see that? I hope so. Okay, I think that's a good spot. I'm going to come in and I'm going to measure 1.5 inches, and I'm going to measure at 2.5 inches. I want marks at both 1.5 and 2.5. And then I'm going to come up to 1/4 inch, which is, I don't remember what, 1/4 of an inch is less than a centimeter. I don't remember what it measures out to be. 1/4 inch is 0.5 centimeters, about 0.5 centimeters. Okay, so I'm going to measure about 1/4 of an inch up. And again, at that 1.5 and 2.5, I am going to make a mark. Excuse me. And what I need to do is, I'm just using a hole punch. If you have a little bit bigger one, this size is just a little bit too big. The hole doesn't fit real well here. But if I do 2 of these on each one, and I'll show you what I mean, it works pretty well. So I'm going to go just to the left of my hole. I think I'm in frame. And I'm going to go just to the right of my hole, of my dot. And it's going to look like this. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Just to the left and just to the right. And then those are my holes. Now you can see it's not an exact match, but this is where the next piece comes in. So I could use scissors and just trim those bottoms up, but I'm going to use an X-Acto knife type tool, and I'll show you why. So I can, let's see, are you guys there? Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to use my X-Acto knife tool, and I am going to cut the bottoms. Just like there's a slit here, I cut a slit. And just like there's a slit here, I cut a slit. But now I can go back up, and rather than making that look like a dog bone, I can come in here and just take out that little divot, that little triangular piece where the two circles intersect. And I can take that out. And honestly, it doesn't look, oh, I cut that a little bit deep. Maybe don't go quite as deep as I did. Darn nabbit, that might not work. Oh yeah, it does. See, look, perfect. It still works. Perfect. And then I've got it, you can see I went up a little bit higher than I should have, but it still works beautifully. This one doesn't touch the bottom, and then this one does. So about between, say, 3/8 and 1/4 of an inch, and you're perfect. And there you go. Put anything in here you want. I don't remember. I said I've done a couple videos now, and I don't remember if I said you can decorate the front or not. You certainly can. It just depends on what you want to use it for. Like this is butterflies, word strips, buttons, tickets, all kinds of stuff. And if I wanted to decorate it, I could turn it around and zhuzh it up on the front and look at it like this, or I could just turn it around and leave it like this and get into and out of it as I need it. All right, I hope that gave you another idea of ways to store your ephemera and your paper bits. And thank you for watching. Have a blessed day.